In this episode, I'm going to dismantle one of the most damaging lies and replace it with the actual science of what is happening to your tissue, your nervous system, and your desire. Because drying up is not your destiny. Sexy After 50. Improve sex and intimacy by healing your nervous system so you finally feel turned on and confident. We're waking up what never left, desire and fire. I'm Dr. Juls. Let's get to it. So stay with me today. I've got 3 really important things I'm going to share with you. 1, you're going to fully understand what vaginal atrophy actually is and what most women are never told. 2, you're going to learn how your nervous system and your desire are operating as the same system and how chronic stress impacts your pelvic tissue, right? And 3, you're going to leave with a somatic chakra-based practice called Reawakening the Pelvic Bowl. So welcome back to Sexy After 50. I'm Dr. Juls. I'm a licensed counselor, professor of counselor education, and author of Are We Going to Have Sex or What? And I'm your guide into the truths nobody taught us about our bodies, our desire, and our nervous systems after 50. And today's conversation, sweet soul, is one I have been wanting to have for a long time because it touches something almost every woman in midlife has experienced in some form, and almost no one is talking about it honestly. It is the lie that your body is simply drying up. We're not going to disappear. The idea that vaginal atrophy, dryness, numbness, lost sensation, painful intimacy, that these are just your inevitable reward for aging. That your sexuality had an expiration date. And guess what? You missed it. No nuance, no context, no conversation about what is actually happening physiologically. Just a kind of resigned shoulder shrug, and the quiet cultural message that women become irrelevant after menopause. Absolutely not. Because here's the truth. Vaginal atrophy is real. It deserves honest, compassionate, scientifically grounded conversation. But the story women are being told about it is catastrophically incomplete. And the missing pieces, the pieces about blood flow, nervous system state, pelvic circulation, arousal physiology, and what chronic disconnection does to living tissue over time, those missing pieces change everything. So today, girl, we're going to jump in all the way. So let's start with the medical truth. Vaginal atrophy is now more accurately termed GSM. And that's a long-ass word I'm not even trying to slaughter. But it's a syndrome of menopause. Big G word, syndrome of menopause, GSM. It is a documented set of physiological changes that occur during and after menopause. Tissue is thinning, right? Reduced lubrication, changes in elasticity, burning, irritation, discomfort or pain during intercourse, urinary symptoms, decreased sensation. These are real, girl. They're real. They're measurable changes, and they affect a significant portion of women in midlife. And research published in the Journal of Menopause estimates that somewhere between 27 and 84% of postmenopausal women experience GSM symptoms. That's a shit ton. Those numbers are likely undercounted because shame, what does shame do to us? Shame keeps us quiet. And estrogen, our good friend estrogen, plays a role here as well. See, estrogen supports collagen production, tissue thickness, lubrication, and the integrity of blood vessels in the vaginal wall. When estrogen declines in perimenopause and menopause, some of that structural support changes. That is a legitimate physiological fact, and it deserves acknowledgement. But here's the officially critical piece that most women are never told. Vaginal and clitoral tissue is a very vascular tissue. So that means it is blood flow dependent. The vagina, the vulva, and the clitoris, these are erectile tissues in the same functional sense that penile tissue is erectile. They depend, y'all, on robust circulation to remain healthy. Robust circulation. And research on female genital arousal has consistently demonstrated that sexual arousal triggers something called the pelvic vasocongestion, a dramatic increase in blood flow to vaginal and vulvar tissue that supports lubrication. The engorgement of the clitoral erectile tissue responsiveness, and elasticity. The body literally becomes more capable of pleasure through blood flow. I mean, think about it. It makes sense. We have been in a constant brace for probably 30 years, trying to get through our careers, raise families, emotional labor, all the overfunctioning that we do, all that bracing is choking off that pelvic floor. We're tightening that as well. Blood flow has not flowed to the genital area in years. And here's what all this means clinically. When circulation to the pelvis tissues decreases over time, whether from a hormonal change, chronic stress, pelvic floor tension, or years of disconnection from arousal, tissue health follows. Tissues that receive less blood flow, less oxygenation, less nerve activation, and less stimulation change. They thin, y'all. They dry. They lose resilience. And girl, please hear me. This is not a punishment. This is not your body betraying you, although I know at times it can feel like that. This is a physiology. This is physiology responding to conditions. And conditions, unlike age, can change. The research of Beverly Whipple and other pelvic health scientists has documented that genital blood flow is acutely responsive to both psychological and physiological arousal cues. Dr. Meredith Chiver's work on genital response has demonstrated that the body's capacity for arousal is far more intact than we gals realize. The disconnect is frequently between genital response and conscious desire, not a failure of the tissue itself. So before we accept the story that we're simply drying up, There's nothing to be done. We need to talk about what you have actually been doing with your pelvis the last 20 to 30 years. And more importantly, your nervous system, what has it been doing? What has it been doing all this time? So I want to say something that I believe is the most important piece of this entire conversation. Most women over 50 are not living in relaxed, receptive, embodied nervous systems. We are operating in chronic survival mode. And let me just take an aside here. I'm recovering from breast cancer. I see my oncologist every 6 months for blood work and so forth. Just had it done yesterday. I have been living in the most hideously dysregulated state for the last, 3 weeks to a month due to this from hell accreditation process I've been having to undergo for the department that I run. I'm a chair at a university, and I've been responsible for this KCREP site visit and then the response, and it has been ugly. I haven't been sleeping. I've been working 15, 20-hour days. I have been tormenting myself. My nervous system completely dysregulated. Chronic survival mode kicked me back to how I was living before I started all this research in my 40s, if you will. Kicked me way back. All that's to say, my labs, I just got them in an email this morning, are horrible. My white counts are completely discombobulated. My liver is discombobulated. I mean, y'all, our body responds to living in this chronic survival mode. And you think desire isn't impacted by this? Please. My husband went to touch me. We have a robust, lovely sex life. In the last 3 or 4 weeks, when he'd go to touch me, I'd just brace, thinking, one more thing. Y'all, you have to be honest about your nervous system, about your nervous state, about the state of your nervous system as we're looking at how to get desire back online. So, we've been operating in a chronic survival mode. Maybe it's come and gone, but it's had its impact. Y'all, we've had decades of caregiving, emotional labor, overfunctioning in relationships, career pressures, aging parents, strained marriages, the invisible, relentless architecture of holding every effing thing together while quietly abandoning yourself. And at some point, often without any dramatic turning point, the nervous system adapts. Threat becomes baseline. Efficiency becomes the primary mode. And pleasure becomes a luxury. The nervous system has quietly stopped allocating resources toward. Yeah, this isn't a metaphor. This is Polyvagal Theory, and I know y'all are all familiar with Dr. Porges because he visits us each week. Oh, but his research on the autonomic nervous system describes the 3 primary states. I bet you can say them with me. The ventral vagal, that's social engagement. That's where we're yummy, yummy. Come and get me. Oh, the place we want to be. Sympathetic state, fight or flight activation, urgency, threat response. Been living there, as I said, the last month. God help me. And the dorsal vagal state. That is shutdown. That's numbness. That's disconnection, dissociation from yourself. It's a freeze. Desire and arousal require that ventral vagal access. They require a nervous system that believes, at least in this moment, that it is safe enough to open. A body locked in chronic sympathetic activation cannot easily soften into pleasure. And pleasure is a softness, y'all. Think about it. You surrender to it. You soften into it. A nervous system perpetually scanning for threat does not naturally prioritize erotic receptivity. A body that has spent years in dorsal vagal shutdown, that quiet, numb, just getting through it state that so many exhausted women know intimately, has often learned to disconnect from sensation in the pelvis entirely. And what happens physiologically in chronic stress is well documented. Cortisol and adrenaline redirect blood flow away from non-essential functions, including reproductive and sexual tissues. The pelvic floor, which is deeply connected to stress response, remember the bracing? It tends to brace, right? Guard and hold tension under prolonged nervous system overload. Arousal pathways down-regulate. Lubrication decreases. Sensation dulls. And women describe it in almost identical language. I just don't feel anything anymore. My body doesn't respond. The thought of sex. I love my partner, but I feel completely numb when we're intimate. Girl, it's not a hormone issue. It's a circulation issue, a nervous system issue, a disconnection issue. And it is compounded by decades of a cultural script that told women, girl, your bodies existed primarily for other people's use and comfort, and that your own pleasure is secondary, optional, or let's face it, especially our generation, shameful or embarrassing. No mas, y'all. No mas. Here's what Dr. Emily Nagoski's research on the dual control model clarifies. Desire operates through an accelerator and a brake. The accelerator responds to sexually relevant cues. The brake responds to threat, real or perceived, physical or emotional. Most women over 50 aren't suffering from a broken accelerator. They are suffering from a brake that is stuck in the on position after years of accumulated stress. Those are completely different problems. And y'all, they require completely different solutions. So I want to segue into addressing a phrase that has been both true and weaponized. I know y'all have heard this. Use it or lose it. Often delivered with pressure, fear, or thinly veiled judgment. And that framing is harmful. Women do not owe anyone sex. Full stop. The goal of this conversation is never obligation. In fact, obligation is only going to stress out your nervous system and start the whole thing over. But I want to be honest here. There is a legitimate physiological principle underneath the phrase that deserves a compassionate translation. Use it or lose it. That's the phrase. Living tissue benefits from circulation and stimulation. Dr. Rosemary Basson's research on female sexual response, specifically her cellular desire model, fundamentally challenged the idea that desire must precede arousal in women. Her work, y'all, demonstrated that for a lot of us gals, particularly those in longer-term relationships, arousal and stimulation often come first and desire follows. The body opens in response to pleasure, not necessarily in anticipation of it. Motivation for intimacy, Basson found, is often not spontaneous hunger. It is a decision to engage, followed by a physical response that builds from there. So what that means practically is that waiting to feel desire before engaging with your body might be the wrong sequence entirely. Circulation creates sensation. Sensation creates responsiveness. Responsiveness can generate desire. Not always the other way around. Pelvic physical therapist, sexual medicine specialists, and menopause clinicians often recommend intentional pelvic health practices for exactly this reason. Not because women are broken, because biology responds to nourishment. Regular arousal, orgasm, self-touch, pelvic floor engagement, hip mobility, somatic movement, breath work, vibration, y'all, all of these increase pelvic blood flow. And that's a good thing. That's what we want. And tissue that is regularly oxygenated and stimulated responds very differently than tissue that has been abandoned for years. So research published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine found that women who remained sexually active, including through self-stimulation, show better vaginal tissue health than those who do not. Not because activity is obligatory, because living tissue responds to circulation the same way every other tissue in your body does. The goal, y'all, isn't performance. The goal is vitality, and vitality is available to you. So, Western medicine has a tendency to treat women's bodies as a collection of disconnected parts. Hormone levels over here, tissue health over there, mental health in a separate department, physical therapy in another building. The integrated, embodied, energetic reality of what it means to be a woman living inside her own body rarely makes it into the clinical conversation, sadly. This is where somatic and chakra psychology offers something genuinely useful. So see, in the chakra system, the sacral energy center, that's down at your lower belly, that governs your pleasure, sensuality, creativity, emotional fluidity, desire, receptivity, and what I call feminine aliveness. And it's located in the pelvic bowl, and it is understood as the seat of a woman's capacity for joy, sensation, and creative expression. When I map chakra psychology onto the nervous system science we just covered, the correlation, y'all, it is striking. The sacral center, the physiology of it, the energeticness of it, requires a regulated nervous system to function. It requires safety, softness, and an absence of chronic threat. It requires that you feel entitled to your own pleasure, not just responsible for everyone else's comfort. And what happens to high-achieving women over 50? Come on. The sacral center shuts down under decades of obligation, under decades of overfunctioning, managing, caretaking, performing, producing, being needed. Not because we gals become less sexual, that's not it. Because we become chronically responsible. The pelvis becomes a place of tension rather than expression, a place of duty rather than aliveness. And over time, many women stop inhabiting that part of themselves entirely. And y'all, it's not in a dramatic, overnight kind of way. It's in a quiet way that happens when you spend 20, 30 years living from the neck up. Interoception research, specifically the work of Sarah Garfinkel and Hugo Critchley on the bodily self-awareness, shows that chronic stress impairs the brain's ability to accurately perceive and respond to internal body signals. So women in long-term, high-stress states often lose the capacity to feel subtle sensations in the body, including pleasure signals. The nervous system becomes less fluent in its own language. The sacral center going quiet, y'all, it's not a metaphor. It's a neuroscience wearing different language. The tragedy is not aging. The tragedy, and I see this all the time in the ladies I work with, it's self-abandonment. And that self-abandonment has become so normalized, it stopped even feeling like a choice. We don't even know we're doing it. And when we try to stop doing it, we're so uncomfortable in our skin, we don't know how to manage. So, I created a practice for you I want you to try today. I'm going to give this to you. I don't want you to perform this. I don't want you to produce a particular result. But I want you to begin gently without any pressure, because, girl, you have enough of that. Rebuilding your relationship with the part of yourself that may have gone quiet. This is called Reawakening the Pelvic Bowl. It takes about 5 minutes. You can do it this week in private with no agenda other than presence. And the first step is to create safety. Before anything else, your nervous system needs a cue that it is safe ground. Dim the lights. Put your phone in a whole other room. Wear something soft or nothing at all. Sit or lie somewhere your body can fully exhale. This is not indulgent preparation. It is neurological necessity. Ventral vagal access. The state required for receptivity. And it's cued by environmental safety. You're not being precious. You're being precise. But you are precious. Step 2, hand to pelvis. Place one hand on your low belly, below your navel, over your pelvic bowl, and simply breathe. Not performance breathing, not seductive breathing, just slow, grounded breath that tells your body, this moment belongs to you. Notice without judgment what you feel in this part of your body. Warmth, tension, numbness, distance, whatever is there is information. Stay curious rather than corrective. Stay self-compassionate. Step 3, gentle pelvic movement. Begin moving your hips in circles, very slow, very small, tiny. like you're thawing something that has been frozen for a very long time. There is no audience here. There's no correct way to do this. The movement itself is the point, because movement increases circulation, and circulation is what we are inviting. In chakra work, we often describe the sacral center as governed by the element of water. Water does not force, it flows. Move accordingly. And step 4 is sacral visualization. I want you to imagine warm orange light in the pelvic bowl. Soft, fluid, available, not forced or urgent. In the chakra system, orange is the color of the sacral center. Pleasure, creativity, fluidity, emotional aliveness. And as you breathe and move, let that light be your attention. And you ask yourself this question slowly, genuinely. What would it feel like to live inside this body instead of managing it from a distance? Girl, don't rush that answer. The asking itself is the practice. And then 5 is the circulation cue. Very gently begin contracting and releasing your pelvic floor, soft and rhythmic, like a pulse, not a clinical Kegel sequence, something slower, more intentional. You're inviting blood flow. You're inviting awareness. You're saying to a part of yourself that has been waiting ever so quietly, I remember you. I'm here. That matters more than you might think. Interoception research tells us that the simple act of bringing direction and directed attention to a body region increases neural activation in that very area. Attention is not passive. Attention is a form of stimulation. And you close the practice by placing both your hands on your pelvis, and you take 3 full breaths. Let the last one be an exhale that goes all the way to the floor. You don't have to feel anything dramatic. In fact, you're probably not going to this time. But that doesn't mean you've not done something meaningful. Showing up with gentle, non-demanding attention is how your body learns it is safe to come home. So I need you to hear this clearly. Your body is not disgusting. It's not failing. It's not too late. But the body does respond to the conditions it has been living inside. And many women have been taught to deprive themselves for decades while calling it love, virtue, strength. They arrive at 50, 55, 60, shocked and grieving that sensation feels distant. That intimacy feels effortful. That desire feels like a rumor from another lifetime. I want to say to all of you beautiful souls, with every bit of clinical authority and human compassion I have, your desire did not die. It went underground to survive. And that, my friend, is a different situation entirely. Yeah, hormones matter. I take mine. I highly recommend them. Localized estrogen therapy, pelvic floor, physical therapy, lubricants, moisturizers, and other medical interventions can be genuinely helpful. And I want every one of you to have access to a provider who takes these conversations seriously. Please advocate for yourself in those rooms. Do not accept, oh, you're just old, BS. But the nervous system, that's the piece that's missing in this conversation. The circulation piece is missing in the conversation. The decades of self-abandonment and what that does to living tissue, that's missing in this conversation. And it belongs in every discussion of women's health after 50. I've worked for years with women of all ages, but especially those in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who rediscovered pleasure, orgasm, intimacy, and a quality of embodied aliveness, girl, that they'd forgotten. They'd forgotten it even existed. Not in spite of their age, but because they finally stopped accepting the story that it was over, because it's not. And they started asking for more interesting questions, such as, what does my body actually need to feel alive? Grab my book, Are We Going to Have Sex or What? I have got it outlined. Your body, it's not going to respond the way it did at 30. Not going to happen. But it can respond beautifully, more deeply, in my experience, and on its own terms, in its own time, and with the right conditions. Girl, you're not drying up. You're being invited home. And I want to help you have that homecoming. Okay, let's land this plane. Here's what you learned today. That vaginal atrophy, what it actually is, including the critical role that pelvic blood flow and circulation play in tissue health beyond what hormones alone explain. You learned how polyvagal theory maps onto desire, that a nervous system locked in chronic stress cannot easily access receptivity, and that safety is not soft concept, but a neurological prerequisite for arousal. You learned Basson's circular desire model and what it means practically, that for many women, stimulation and arousal often precede desire rather than follow it, and that waiting to feel spontaneous hunger before engaging with your body may be the wrong sequence entirely. You learned why Nagoski's dual control model matters here. Most women are not suffering from a broken accelerator. They are suffering from a brake stuck in the one position of on. You learned about the sacral shutdown, the energetic and physiological reality of what happens to a woman's pelvic aliveness under decades of obligation, overfunctioning, and self-abandonment. And you walked away with a concrete practice, reawakening your pelvic bowl to begin safely, and gently inviting circulation, sensation, and presence back into your body. This is where the reboot begins. So, y'all, thank you so much for spending time with me today on Sexy After 50. Thank you for putting up with me stumbling with past words. If this episode opened something in you, good, because your body was never meant to become a monument to self-abandonment. And if you're ready to go deeper, please grab my book, Are We Going to Have Sex or What? It's on Amazon or my website. Share this with a gal that you love. I'm going to see you next time. And I want to remind you, welcome to your homecoming. They told you the fire dies at 50. They lied. Tap the show notes to download reignite your fire and desire. Your free 72-hour erotic reboot. Unlock the arousal pathway buried in your nervous system. Reclaim the raw hunger you were taught to suppress, and rewire your body to crave pleasure again. Not because you're broken, but because you're ready to burn. Move from invisible to incredible. I'm Dr. Juls. Keep burning.